Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and today we have got a Game Week 4 episode of the 100 Experts video. The video where we look at 100 Experts data and see what transfers they're making, who they're captaining, are they using any chips, and use that data to find trends to work out what we need to do with our team. So guys, if you do enjoy this one, please do drop a like. It really does help out the channel, and do subscribe if you're new around here as well. Let's meet our experts. Alright, so here are the 100 experts, pundits, content creators, veterans, whatever you want to call them. They are right here on the screen. A massive thank you to all of them for showing me what they're up to this game week. And we're going to try and figure out what are the best moves based on what these guys are doing. So let's do that. In general, out of our 100 expert managers, 61% are making one transfer this game week, 22% are making two transfers this game week, and 2% are making three transfers as well. So we are having a few of our managers are taking a hit this week to try and get what they need to do done. But there's not a huge amount of hits this week in general, and most managers are keen to make at least one transfer, because you can see here 11% not making any transfer this week. That's pretty low. It's reasonably low. I think the average is probably a little bit higher than that. So in general, I think this is a week to make a transfer, and that's kind of backed up even more by the fact that 4% are using a wild card this week. So far this season, this is the highest amount of experts we've seen using a wild card. I imagine we will see it more, 4, 5, 6, 7% as we go through the next few weeks. But right now, we are entering into wild card territory if your team is in a really, really bad situation. But for most of us, hopefully it's not in such a bad situation and we can fix it with a transfer or two. But in general, what I see from this is that this is a week to make a transfer, maybe even two, particularly if you've got two in the bank. It could be a good opportunity to switch your team up a little bit. So looking at the most popular transfers in the world, how do these compare with our experts? So in general, if you are just the average, normal, run-of-the-mill FPL manager, you're probably going to be transferring in Raheem Sterling this game week. Over 800,000 transfers in for him already. That could go closer to 1 million by the time the deadline rolls around. But we've got Maddison up there as well. It's going to be interesting to see, who do you think the experts are going to prefer this game week? Are they going to be going for Sterling more, or are they going to go for Maddison more? Or are they going for neither? Well, we'll find out in just a couple of minutes. But yeah, certainly overall, people like Sterling, Maddison, and Gusto there, to be fair. Udogi slightly lower than that, but still pretty high. And there's a bunch of other players in there as well. Romero, Cash, Chilwell, Bowen, etc., etc. So, looking at these, how many do you think the experts are interested in? Well, a few. Not as many as you'd think, though. So, Sterling, Maddison, Udogi, Wissa, and Mbumo are also being transferred in by our experts. These are quite popular transfers in by our experts as well, but that does leave a lot of gaps. So yeah, we do need to discuss that. But yeah, definitely Sterling and Maddison, they're going to be popular. Udogi's going to be popular, and those Brentford guys playing against Bournemouth next, you can understand why our experts might want to get involved in those players if they didn't have them already. But there are a few players that our experts are just not interested in at all. Gusto, interestingly, Romero, Cash, Anderson, and James Ward-Prowse, 0 out of 100 experts are bringing these players in. And that's really, really significant. We've got 100 top managers, and not a single one of them is bringing in any of these 5 players. Gusto looks like he's probably only got one more game week before Reece James is going to be back, so you can understand why a lot of our experts are avoiding him in general, because they don't really want to buy a player in now just for one game week. If they already had him, fair enough, but they wouldn't be bringing him in at this point. It's probably a bit too late to go for Gusto, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the experts as well. No expert is going to go for Romero when Udogi is right there. We can all see when we watch the football games from Spurs that Udogi is by far the better pick of the two players. Super attacking defender, and you get the same amount of points for those clean sheets. Don't think there's any rotation risk there either. Matty Cash is playing against Liverpool, so not really too keen to go for him right now. But maybe after that, we might see our experts going for Cash. But ahead of the Liverpool game, I feel like there's probably more priority transfers to make. And no one's really interested in Anderson, maybe a bit of a boring transfer. And James Ward-Prowse, interesting game against Luton, but I'm not sure it's the right way to target this Luton game if you're going to go for a West Ham attacker. So with that said, we need to have a look at the expert transfers. First of all, who are they selling? Well, they're selling Martinelli. They are really selling Martinelli. 40 out of our 85 transfer-making experts are using, or at least one of their transfers, to remove Martinelli from their team. And that is very, very high, really high, considering that I don't even know if, more than 40% even had Martinelli. It seems like all of the Martinelli owners are giving up on him, and I definitely understand why. Martinelli's numbers have been pretty low, and in a situation where there's so many midfielders to go for right now, Martinelli is probably like kind of the worst of a good bunch. Like he's still a very good FPL pick, but he just can't compete with the likes of Maddison and Sterling and Mbeumo, and Bruno Fernandes has done well. We've got Saka doing well as well. We've got the Brighton boys who have been doing well as well. How can you compete with all of that? So it's not that Martinelli's a bad pick, it's just that he's not an elite pick, I guess, right now. And I think a lot of that has been down to the fact that Gabriel Jesus has not been playing. Martinelli with Nketiah has not been the one at all. He's not getting the same chances. It's a difficult situation because we've got, Jesus coming back now, and that could improve Martinelli. But at the same time, is there going to be rotation when European football comes around? Martinelli plays against Manchester United next on kind of Wan-Bissaka's side, which is always a difficult thing for a winger to do. You can understand the logic of removing Martinelli when you're going for one of the many better options. Rashford is also not safe, though. So in terms of who to sell out of Rashford and Bruno Fernandes, our experts are heavily leaning towards Rashford. So he is definitely another midfielder that you could potentially sell. Of course, selling these guys is dangerous, but like we say, these players, Martinelli, Rashford, they're probably going to get you some FPL points if you keep them, but can we do better? And I think that's the main takeaway. Gabriel has been all but given up on now. The last few Gabriel owners among our experts are slowly trickling out now, getting rid of that guy. Mitoma is interesting. He is being sold as well. We know that Brighton have some horror fixtures coming up with Newcastle next, and yeah, that's going to be tough for them. And João Pedro, similar situation. Shaw is injured. Richarlison is not been performing, and Watkins being sold a little bit there as well, which is kind of interesting. Just 3 sales though, nothing too significant. The most popular transfer in is Maddison. So yes, guys, you've probably been wondering who's going to be the more popular transfer in among experts. Among the overall player base, it's been Raheem Sterling. That's never really a surprise. Usually, the overall most popular transfer in will just be the player who scored the most points last game week, and obviously Sterling scored more points than Maddison last game week. But our experts do seem to see a little bit more longevity in Maddison. But that's not to say that Maddison is the only way to go, because 40 transfers in for Maddison, 31 in for Raheem Sterling. That's not too far away, though both really popular players, and they're both expected to do really well. I don't think this is cut and dry. I don't think this is decided, but if you are one of those people who is kind of on the fence, you're not really sure which way to go, well, technically the experts slightly prefer Maddison. So if you need just some kind of virtual coin toss, some way to make a decision if you really can't decide, well, experts leaning Maddison, but please don't make that lead you to believe that Sterling is a bad pick. Sterling is definitely not a bad pick. 31 out of our 85 transfer-making managers is still super high. Really significant numbers there, and there's probably not going to be too much between Maddison and Sterling. So I don't really think there's a wrong answer here. But if you need something to make a decision for you, then why not this, eh? Udogie is interesting. 13 transfers in for him, which makes him by far the most popular defensive transfer in. I don't know if you guys expected that or not. No Gusto, so maybe Udogie is the guy for our expert. A few people bringing in Nicholas Jackson and Wissa. Maybe they fancy a forward switch there. And Mbeumo, couple of transfers in. But Ruben Dias, did not expect to see him in here. When I was gathering the data and a few people were picking Ruben Dias, I was kind of thinking, I didn't really expect that. I would have thought that Gvardiol would maybe be the Man City defensive pick. That's probably who I would go for. But yeah, Ruben Dias apparently 3 transfers in for him as well. So if you kind of fancy going on the Man City defense, perhaps the experts will be recommending you Dias possibly there. So yeah, kind of interesting stuff there. So based on those trends, we can make some suggested transfers from that data. So first of all, Martinelli out, Maddison or Sterling in. I think that's a really obvious transfer for those of you guys who basically have a load of midfielders, including Martinelli. Like particularly if you're you've got a midfield of Bruno, Rashford, Saka, Martinelli, and then maybe Mbeumo. Then in that case, probably the worst player of those 5, or maybe got Foden in there instead of Mbeumo. out of those 5, the worst one is probably Martinelli. Not even because he's a bad pick, because he's just the worst of a great bunch. And Maddison and Sterling, they're probably better picks right now. So yeah, I feel like you can afford to remove Martinelli for one of those 2 players. Rashford is also a potential sell, not quite as high on the list as Martinelli. I would say Rashford is slightly higher on the pecking order of players you want to pick and keep, but Maddison could come in for Rashford. Maybe Sterling could come in for Rashford as well there. If you have Mitoma in your team, maybe you have Solly March as well, I feel like actually you could prioritize a move for that player out to Maddison or Sterling, as long as you can afford it, which is probably going to be the difficult thing. Can you actually afford to go for Mitoma or March to a Maddison or a Sterling? Depends on your budget, really, doesn't it? So that's definitely an option, and I would maybe prioritize that move ahead of the Martinelli out move, potentially, or you could do both. That's definitely an option as well. We saw plenty of our experts actually bringing in both Maddison and Sterling, and a lot of those were removing kind of, kind of freeing up a little bit of budget doing this, by removing both Martinelli and Mitoma and bringing in Maddison and Sterling as a combo. And I feel like, actually that works pretty well. It's quite an aggressive way of playing, really trying to go for those high-scoring players. It could work out really well. In terms of defenders, Gabriel to Udogie looks really, really obvious. Any defender you want to sell, Udogie is probably the solution this game week. And if you can afford to do João Pedro to Nicholas Jackson, I think that's probably a move you quite like to make as well. Now, with that all said, we've got the transfers out of the way. How about captaincy? Who do you think is going to be the most popular captain this game week, guys? Well, I'll give you a clue. It's not surprising. So we have once again got Erling Haaland as the #1 captain pick for the game week. And for the first time ever, after doing this video series for over 2 years now, this is the first time ever we've got a player that is the only player above 1%. Usually, we have at least another 2%er in there somewhere, or maybe a 3%er. This is the first time we've ever had one player above 1% and no one else above 1%. We've got Bowen and Bumo, Saka, Wissa, all 1%ers. Only one of our experts are going for each of these players. Everyone else, 96 out of 100, are going for Erling Haaland. So another week of absolute domination. This is ridiculously high. I know you probably think, it should be 100%, right? When you're dealing with numbers like 100, which is a pretty large numbers, there is always going to be a couple of outliers. So 96% is insanely high. And this really shows me, particularly as there's no one else above 1%, it shows me that you should 100% be captaining Erling Haaland this week. There's no real doubt here that the experts like this pick. If you want to go for differential, fair enough, but be prepared to be hurt. Big hurt, because Erling Haaland is the best attacker in the game, and Fulham are the worst defence in the game. It is a no-brainer to captain Erling Haaland this game week. But a few people going elsewhere. Bowen against Luton is kind of interesting, I guess. The Brentford guys against Bournemouth, hey, maybe that could work out. Saka versus Man United, I don't really understand, but at least Saka is kind of against on the weaker side of that Manchester United defence, so maybe he could do some damage there. Penalties as well, of course. But look, I can't see past Erling Haaland. Even if Bowen and Bumo, Saka and Wissa do very well, Haaland is going to do just as well, if not better. So there doesn't seem any point in taking that risk this week. So yeah, hopefully that's pretty clear for you guys. It is really not recommended to go differential captaincy this week, according to our experts. So just don't do it. I can't recommend it. I just cannot recommend it. But it's on you at the end of the day, I guess. So that is going to be it for today's video. I do want to remind you guys that there's still 50% off a Fantasy Football Hub subscription, where you can get access to all of their amazing tools used by our experts to try and make the best possible FPL decisions and, help you become, mini league winners. They do still have the 50% off until at the end of August. So after deadline this week, there is no more opportunity to get 50% off. They are still running their money back guarantee as well. So if you win, if you don't win your mini league this year and you are a Fantasy Football Hub subscriber, you will get your money back. So win your mini league or your money back. That's a pretty good deal for the year. So make sure you check out the link at the top of the description. This really is your final call if you want to get the amazing offer of, money back and 50% off. It's a lot. But aside from that, guys, make sure you're dropping a like. Really does help out the channel. Subscribe if you're new around here. One more video today. I'm exhausted, but we need to do 4 video uploads in 48 hours. We've got to do it just to get that content out. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.